The speaker, Gary Sutcliffe, W9XT, will be our speaker tonight. Gary's on Zoom, and its title is POTA, Fun in the Park. Gary, take it away.
Okay, let me share my screen here. Okay, there we go. Okay, POTA stands for Parks in the Air, and the object is to work other stations who are operating from parks or similar things in the United States or around the world for that matter. Now, for a park to count, it's got to be in a national or a state park or a national or state trail or a wildlife area or maybe a historical monument or something of that sort. Cities and county parks do not count, and they also have to be listed on the by the administrator for that particular area for it to be valid for an operation as an activity for that park. And you can participate as a hunter, which is what I started out doing, just basically working people that are already in the parks. Or you can become an activator as well. And I started doing that last summer, and I really, really enjoyed it, where you go out and set up and operate from the park. And one of the kind of neat things about the programs is a ton of awards or PDF downloads. I don't download them, but it's just kind of fun to track them and use them as a way of keeping score or whatever of what your accomplishments are in the program. Program started in 2017. A year or two before that, the ARL had an activity for activate the national parks, and people thought that was kind of a cool idea. So a group of people went and started an activity that runs forever instead of just for a year. So there's a lot of parks to work. There's over 11,000 in the United States. There's 333 in Wisconsin alone. And there's about 140 other countries that are also participating, and they each all have their parks. For a country to become a member, all you really have to do is have somebody willing to administer the parks and stuff and decide which parks are what and they're valid in your area. So there's every once in a while some new countries come out there. You can basically work anybody, any mode. The most popular is sideband, FT8 and CW. FM is popular in a lot of countries like Japan and Germany. We have some mountains. They'll go up with an HT or maybe a Yagi or something, and they get really good coverage, and they'll activate a park on VHF, and you'll see them sometimes that are spotted. To get started, pretty much all you got to do is get on the air and start looking at workstations that are calling CQ POTA. There's really no formal required exchange for it to count. Usually it's a signal report, and then usually you give your state. The signal report is supposed to be a real one, and with the real signal report and the state, the activators get to know that how well they're getting out, so it helps them. And an FT8 or FT4, just a regular QSO count, so you wouldn't do anything special. If you're an activator, you probably call CQ POTA. Other than that, it's just a regular digital contact. Now, every park has an ID. It's going to be two letters which indicate the country, and then it'll be 4 or 5 digits indicating which park. Every time they add new parks, they add them onto the list, and it gets longer and longer. It was under 10,000 when I started a couple of years ago, and now they're over 11,000. Like US 4352 is for the Kettle Moraine State Forest, which is around here, which I operate from a lot. A Canadian park, the Camwood Regional Park, is CA 1100, the CA indicating Canada. Now you can also be operating from multiple parks at the same time. For example, the Ice Age Trail, which goes all over the state, goes through Pike Lake State Park, and there's a parking lot for that. So if I go to operate from there, I'm operating from the Kettle Moraine State Forest, and I'm also operating from the Ice Age Trail. So that makes it more popular because they get 2 contacts the price of 1. There's a place in Washington, D.C., where I think it's a national park, a national monument, and two trails that all intersect at the same spot. So it's a 4 for and that's a very popular spot for people out there to operate from. I did work some guy out west someplace. I'm not exactly sure what they all were, but that was good for 6 at one part. It was pretty cool. Now you're encouraged to work these guys over and over again. There's as long as you can't work them like twice in the same day, unless they change the band or they change modes or they change parks. So if you worked them on 40 phone, you could also work them again on 40 FT8 and again on 40 CW, or if they went to 20 meters, you can work them again there. Or if they go to a new park, you can work them again. And you're encouraged to work them because they get awards and stuff too, based on how many contacts and other things. Now, the aid to find out where everybody is a site called the POTA app. And there's a lot of information there, but one of them is you can set it up to spots, and it'll show who's on the air. And if you look in this on the left-hand side, you'll see that the last time they were spotted, and you see who the activator is, or call sign, then the frequency, and then their park. And activators are encouraged to self-spot when they start. And if I work somebody and then they haven't been spotted in a few minutes, and I'll tend to spot them again so that people know that the guy is active. Like that at the bottom there was 20 minutes ago. He probably didn't indicate that he went QRT, and so somebody might go listening for him or waste their time. So, and some places I've been to a park or two where I couldn't get cell coverage, so I couldn't self spot. So sometimes just tune around and work the guys calling CQ POTA. Now, to register for the thing, you just go to parksontheair.com and you just register, fill out a short form, your email address and call sign and your location, a few things. And there's no cost. It's free to do this. They do take donations. And you're registered. And then you'll start seeing your awards and whatever, which are PDF downloads. And the interesting thing about this is you may already have some awards won. Every contact that you made with a station operating the park since it started in 2017 will count. When I signed up, I actually had like 3 or 4 awards already that I didn't even know that I had, because I'd worked some of these guys in the past for various reasons. And one of the things that you get is your profile page, which people can look at and see what you've been up to and stuff. Down at the bottom, it shows the pictures of all the awards. These are the awards that I've won so far. Of course, when you start, you may only have 1 or 2 awards. And up in the upper right there, some statistics. It tells me how many activations I've made and how many parks I've been to and how many contacts I've made from the parks and how many parks I've worked totally and how many park contacts I've made. And there's some other information too. We won't go into that. And you also get in a kind of a dashboard showing your awards that you can look at, and up at the top there shows all the awards you've got and when you got them, and an endorsement you've got, and that's only part of you. To scroll through there. Then there's some little meter type things that show where you are in the next award and how many more contacts or points you need. And below that, on the right, you see the thing with all the green things. Those are the states that I've hunted parks in, and the ones on the left are all the states I've operated from. As you can see, I've only done Wisconsin. Each park will have a page, which is very useful. Up in the upper right, you can see a map of where this park's located, and you can zoom in and get a better idea where it's located. To the right or to the left of that is some information about the park. We'll go into that in a little more detail. Below that is the park leaders. These are the guys that have activated the park the most time. It's like one guy has activated the park, what was that, 43 times? And there's another guy that's made over 2,000 contacts from there. Then to the right of that is a list about the last, 8 or 9 operations from that park, and what band or how many contacts they made and what modes they made, and when the dates they were that class there. So a lot of information there about the parks. Here's some of the awards that you get for being a hunter. The one upper left is probably your first award. It's a bronze certificate. You get that when you contact 10 parks. Then you get the silver when you get to 20, and gold when you get to 30, and it goes up I think platinum at 50, but then when they get to 100 or more, then they name them after plants for some reason, which is kind of cool. You can see the one down at the bottom left there as an echinacea one. That one I got recently for working 1,500 unique parks. Um, the top middle one is the 6-pack. It's because I worked six parks on 6 meters. That was another one that I had out to begin with because I chased grid squares on 6 meters, and a lot of the rovers will operate from parks, and then they'll submit their logs to POTA as well for the to log with the world for the VUCC thing. The one next to that's for working all states. The middle bottom one is for working DX parks. You work 5 different parks in 5 different countries. You get the first one, then you get an endorsement. Every 5, you can see up to 45 different countries worked. One on the bottom right is Support Your Park weekend. They have 4 weekends a year, one in each season, where they encourage people to get on. And if you work a station or operate from a park, then you get an award for that one. And I think the next one's coming up next month, and towards the end of April is the next Support Your Park weekend. And those are very, very busy, very active. They have a class of awards they call the Repeat Offender Awards, which I think is kind of funny. The one on the left is the Fox Den one, and you get that for contacting the same park. It doesn't have to be the same person, but if you contact the same park 40 times, you get this award. The other one to the right here is for working the same guy in a park 50 times, and they have endorsements for these two. Now, this guy here, this KD4MZM, he's on all the time. There's another guy, K7CAR, who I've probably worked over 100 times. Some of these guys are very active, and if you hear them, you just work them. It doesn't take very long. And there's some other hunter awards, the early shift and late shift hunter, when you work 100 parks, either in the evening or very early in the morning. I mentioned the Repeat Offender Awards. There's a New Year's hunter if you work a park the first week of the year. Worked all entities, which you work every park in the state or in the country. So like you wanted to work all the Wisconsin parks for 333, it's going to take a while. But I actually got quite a few of these because some of the parks are like nature preserves that are DXCC countries. So I worked a DXpedition there to get a new country for DXCC, and then I find out that the whole area is a nature reserve and is considered a park. So I get the award for working all the parks in that country, which is kind of cool. So I probably got 6 or 7 where I worked every park, all one of one. Now, to get hunting, the QSOs, there's really no required format that you have to use. There's no required information. You just have to have a QSO. Generally, they're very short. They're not like a contest one where it's really short, fast. Some people do it. It's a little more laid back. Some guys are a little more chatty, especially on phone. But you start out, you'll hear a park guy. If I was in a park, I call CQ POTA. This is here set up for a CW contact, but phone would be very similar. And let's say W9XT hears me, so he sends his call sign. I come back and I give him, he's strong, so I give him a 599. And I'll say Wisconsin. A lot of times the park activators don't say their state because they assume you know it because you looked them up on the spotting thing and said what state they're in. And then Bill hears me, and I'm only running low power and a crappy antenna, so I'm only 559. So he gives me a 559. He gives me the state, so I know I'm getting out and how strong I am and what areas of the country, the world that I'm working in. I say to you, and then I work the next guy. So it's pretty quick. And guys on phone sometimes are a little bit more chatty. FT8 contacts are just like regular FT8 contact you make with anybody else, except the guy is probably calling CQ POTA. Well, I did just hunting for the first few years. I started out when I heard a friend of mine on the air, and so I gave her a call and worked her, and I started looking into this stuff. And this is kind of fun. I really like the idea that I didn't really have to do anything as a hunter. I just had to sign up, and I didn't have to send in my logs or anything like that like you do for some other program, because the activators have to send the logs, and if they send in the logs and you're in the logbook, you get credit for it. And here's a few parks that I've been to. The one on the left is Cedarburg Bog, which is on Highway 33, just west of Port Washington. Belmont Mound is a park that's on the western part of the state. Last year, I went to Central States VHF conference. It's in Iowa. I stopped at a couple of parks, and that was just a really beautiful, nice little park. It's a great view. I really like that park. It's got a nice shelter house and picnic tables, and it's just a really nice park. You see the Jackson Marsh Wildlife Area that's nearby. That's actually it's on just off of Highway 60, north of Highway 60, about a mile or so between Jackson and Cedarburg. And more than once, I've stopped there on the way to an RSC meeting. I'll leave an hour early or so, stop there, make 50 or 60 contacts, then go to the meeting. So I've been to that one quite a few times. It's nothing special, but it's very, very convenient for me. This is what I use to operate from. I do most of my operating from the car. Um, I plan to operate from picnic table or from something else when I go to nicer parks. But a lot of the places I go to are just a parking lot, and it's really not a good place. And it's a lot faster to set up and operate from the car. My rig's an FT818. It's a little 5-watt radio. All mode goes 160 through 432. I have a 12-volt, 12 amp hour lithium ferrite phosphate battery that I use to power the thing. And I can usually operate for probably 10 or 12 hours on a charge with this thing. My antennas are pretty crappy. They're old Hustler whips. They used to belong to my dad. I inherited them from my dad. I got a mag mount I just slap on the car. It's not strong enough to operate in motion, and it'd fall off, but it's fine for when I'm parked. I do mostly 20. I do some 30 and 10 meters. Unfortunately, I can't get the thing to load up on 40 meters, I think partially because I don't have good enough ground enough. I've got a sunroof on here, which really hurts. I mean, it's nice to have the sunroof, but it's not the best for a ground plane for a radio. And for some reason, I can't get the 15-meter ones to load up, and I'll have to get that going one of these days. I do about 90% CW and 10% sideband, mostly because of QRP and the bad antenna. CW is a lot more effective. Plus, I enjoy CW more than I do phone. And so far, I've had 64 activations, 18 parks, all in Wisconsin, and I made about 2,300 QSOs from the parks with the 5 watts. Inside the car is my shack. That yellow thing is like a toolbox that I bought at one of these auctions a couple of years ago. I thought I'm going to need that someday before I got into POTA, but it turned out perfect. It holds all my stuff and nice and convenient. I can just leave it in the back of the car, and I can pull it out, and everything pretty much but the antennas will fit inside there. You can see the 818. I have a little clipboard I put on there upside down just to hold the radio. So it's nice and convenient to tune around. Now, I paper log, so I have a clipboard with my notebook with the log sheets. Up in the upper left, you'll see this little memory CW keyer. It's made by some little schlock operation in Slinger, Wisconsin. It's got 4 memories, runs forever on a 9-volt battery, and so it's very convenient. In the upper right there is a paddle that I bought off of from Amazon, and it's got 3 really strong magnets. So I glued a steel washer to the clipboard, and the magnets hold it there really, really well. But I can just slide it off when I want to pack it up to move on. So it only takes me about 5 minutes to set up all together and tear down. So it's pretty quick, and it works pretty well. Now, there's a lot of activator aids. If you want to look for some parks, there's a map of the world basically that shows all of them. You can zoom in, and here you see me zoomed in southeastern Wisconsin. You can see all the little yellow. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but this one is the Jackson Marsh, and there's the Cedarburg Marsh. Here's a Lizard Mound, which is a nice one. We'll talk about more. Now, there's Kettle Moraine at Pike Lake, which is part of Kettle Moraine, is over here at Pike Lake State Park. But that's not shown. One of these dots up here is the northern unit. There's 4 or 3 units of the Kettle Moraine State Park. There's a northern, southern, and the Pike Lake units. And then, for whatever reason, the dot shows the one in the northern sections, but there are actually 3. But if you operate from any of the 3, it all counts the same. As you can see, there are not a whole lot of them. Sometimes you have little clusters and stuff, but you got some fair amount of driving here if you want to hit a lot of parks. If you click on the page that shows the park information, they'll have a map there that zooms in, and you can zoom in a lot closer, and you can look at the roads and see the best way to get there and stuff. And this is the one for Lizard Mound. Again, this is one of my favorite parks that I've operated from. And here's the rest of the information page on the Lizard Mound. You can see the name of it, Lizard Mound State Park. The number here is US 9704. It's the United States, and it's part of the Wisconsin block. And there'll be a latitude and longitude. And usually if you put that in your GPS, it'll give you the coordinates for a good place to park. And that's kind of useful because some of the wildlife places, there actually a lot of them are for hunting and things like that. And there might be multiple parking lots, and that's a good place as a start to see that's a good park to operate from. I mentioned early and late shift awards for working people early or late. There's the times they're valid. If the park has a website, I'll have a link to that, which is nice. And it'll tell you how you get there. In this case, you can drive there. And it's an active park, first operated by some guy in 2022. And there's been 43 activations out of 44 attempts. If you operate from a park, you have to make 10 contacts with the council. Probably someone to get there and they didn't get his 10 contacts. So there's 44 attempts, only 43 were successful. There's 1,175 QSOs when I took this shot. And sometimes there's some extra information. And I'll talk about the activations. The most recent activations here, you can see that I've been half of the ones the last 6. And then down here, you see who the park leaders are. K9ZIE, he's the guy that maintains the Wisconsin administrative stuff. KC9TSO is, of course, Nate was a member of the club. He's pretty active in parks. He's number 2. And I'm number 3. You see, I have 4. And Nate's just got me edged out by 9 QSOs. Now, the park's closed until April 1st. So after April 1st, I'll be over there so I can see if I can put myself to the top of the leaderboard. And if Nate's listening, here's a challenge for him to get back up there before I do. If there's a link, then it'll bring in here is the one for Lizard Mound, and it's got some information about the park and what you can do there. And you can download a PDF map, and this shows the park. This is a park. There's a lot of Indian burial mounds and stuff, which is pretty cool to walk around and see those things. You can see the road. They got an area here where they've got picnic here with picnic tables. There's an information center that explains what goes on there, but it's never been working when I was there. Porta potty, picnic tables, and information booths and stuff. But then you got to go down here to the parking lot, the park, and that's where I operate from this park. And the thing that's nice about it is it's just north of West Bend. So like I like to go to the farmers market in West Bend a lot. So a lot of times I go to the farmers market in the morning, and then I'll go there and then I'll operate for an hour or so before I come home. It's a very nice park. Google Maps is also very useful for checking out parks. Here you can see the Google map of the park. You can see some of the mounds there. Here's a parking lot. It's where the GPS coordinates from that were given. And here's the picnic, another area down here. And a lot of the wildlife areas or whatever have multiple parking lots. Some do, some don't. But sometimes a lot of them are just like a little gravel area on the side of the road. And the Google Maps can kind of show you which ones there are. And so you might decide, well, I think this one over here might be a better place to operate. So I use Google Maps quite a bit for checking out parks too. Park amenities, they can range from really nice places with restrooms and picnic tables and shelters and camping, and some of them are just a gravel and sometimes muddy parking lot and nothing else. And a lot of the wildlife places don't have very good markings, and it's easy to miss them. I've done that a few times, so having a good GPS that's pretty accurate within 100 feet or so is pretty useful for knowing when the park entrance is. This is the one at Cedarburg Marsh, which is probably my second to last least favorite park that I've been to. There's nothing there except the thing in the. It's right next to Highway 33 on this side of the tree there, and there's lots of trucks go by, and it's really noisy, and there's power lines that run along the side of the road. So it's not my favorite place, and I probably won't be going back again to that one. Now, I mentioned I operate or I log with paper logs. You have to send the logs in an ADIF format. And so I use a program called Fast Log Entry by this German guy. And the nice thing about it has a POTA mode. So the ADF file has to have some special fields for POTUS information that probably your regular logging program doesn't have. So you got to make sure that those are in there so that the POTA servers can decode what it is. It's a little bit quirky, but once you get used to it, it's pretty fast, and there's no cost to it. You header area, you enter your call sign in your grid, and you put in the park you're in. In the log area, you put your date, and then the abandoned mode. And your first contact, you put the full time, the call sign, sign reports. Now this guy was activating from a park, so I want to get a park credit, so I put POTA, and I put his park number. He's a Canadian guy. Now, the second guy I worked was still in the 2200, so I only have to do the minutes because only the minutes change. Call sign, then the signal report, and here's another POTA one, so I put it in here. Then I started calling CQ and working people calling me, and then this guy at 38, I put in the call and the information, and then the next one the same thing. Now the next guy I worked was also at 2240. And it was 599 both ways. So all I had to do was enter the call sign and filled in the rest of the information from what it was from before, and so on. So it's pretty fast. I typically don't have more than 75 or 80 contacts in an operation, so it's not real bad doing this. It'd be more convenient if I had a computer and logged, but then that's extra equipment to bring along, and it's yeah, I haven't gotten that point yet. Now, there's awards that go for the activators, just like there are for the hunters. Generally, they follow the same, like the hunter awards. Like the first one you get as a hunter is the bronze hunter. Well, when you've activated 10, excuse me, 10 parks, you'll get the bronze activator award, and you get the silver and so on. There's some special ones. One's park to park. If you're in a park and you work another guy in a park, it's a park to park, and every 25 you get an endorsement award, an endorsement for park to park. There's a kilo award, which I don't have yet. You have to make 100 contacts from the same park. I'm around 820 from the Kettle Moraine, so I'll probably get that in another trip or two. The Rover awards by activating a number of parks in the same day, UTC. I've done that once where I hit 5 parks in one day. From Wisconsin, doing more than 10 or 15, at least this part of the state, it's going to take a lot of driving and a long day because they're kind of spread out. There's some guy in Georgia who holds a record. He has 50 parks in one day, which is pretty amazing. He really did it. So I've got the Warthog Road for doing 5. Maybe I'll come up with some plan and come up with a way to get the next one for 10 parks this summer. Now, when I activate a part, I have some strategy. Now, I've been hitting the local parks because there's less travel, and I'm using that just to build a number of parks and the QSO totals for some of the awards. The one I operate the most from is at Pike Lake, which is part of the Kettle Moraine, and it's only a couple of miles from my house, so I can be there in less than 5 minutes. And there's a parking lot there for the Ice Age Trail. So when I operate from there, I get credit from operating from 2 parks at the same time. So it's a twofer. I said it's just really quick to get there. If there was a trail, I could probably really walk there because it's probably only a mile or so as a crow flies to get to that location. So I'll look for locations by scouting out the maps and stuff, and I'll try to find areas where there's fewer people. I'll try to find parking lots that are away from the big park features. Like if there's a beach or stuff, there's probably gonna be a lot of people there. I try to kind of be a little bit, under, a lot of low key kind of thing. So I'll try to stay away from other people for the most part. Like I said, mostly operated from my car, mostly because most of the places I've operated from, there's really no good place to set up. But I'll probably go to some nicer parks with a longer drive and plan on spending a few hours there. And I'll find a place that like a nice picnic table or something and set up and operate for a few hours. And I look for areas and times that suit the weather too. If it's hot weather, you don't want to be out in the sun. So I'll use the Google Maps and whatever to see, well, is there some place I can park in the shade? Or if it's during the cooler part, like I've been on a couple of times this year, it's not been very warm. It's been over 40, but you probably find a place where it's sunny, so it stays nice and warm in the car. And so I'll look for sunny spots. And a lot of times I'll combine these longer distances with something else. Like I mentioned, I went to Central States VHF conference, which is in Iowa last summer. I hit two parks on the way out there. I went to an SMC radio convention is in near Chicago. I stopped at the Bong Recreation on the way down. I mentioned Lizard Mound. I often go there when if I go to the farmer's market or I'm up there for West Bend for something else. And Jackson Marsh, if I'm on the way to a hockey meeting or something. Last fall, I hit the Asselin Park on the way home from a Badger game. So I'll try to combine them with other trips. Last year, I went to the Baraboo Swap Fest. That's a very small ham fest and probably not worth going there on its own. But I figure, well, if I can combine it with a couple of parks, it made it worthwhile. And I did hit a couple of parks. So it made the trip worthwhile. I like quick setup and takedown. Um, and because I'm running low power and a very inferior antenna, I work mostly CW for the weak signal advantage. I've had a lot of DX call me. I'm amazed how many countries. And then the last one out, I had an Italian call me. I was convinced I had the call wrong because he was so loud. I couldn't believe that he was actually in Italy, but he was. I had him send his call 3 times just to make sure, and sure enough. Now, sometimes I'll work the strong sideband guys, and I'll start out doing that because it's quicker and it's a good way to get park-to-park contacts. But I found on weekends it's not very productive because there's just so much activity that there'll be all these guys with these huge stations with 100 watts in a dipole that drown me out with my 5 watts in a small vertical that I have a hard time getting through. So a lot of times I don't bother doing that on weekends. But it works a little bit better on weekdays. There's not so much activity. And then I'll sometimes do a quick scan on CW to work to park too. And then I'll call CQ to run the stations. And I can get some pretty good pileups going sometime when the conditions are right. It's not unusual to work 50 or 60 stations in an hour on CW when conditions are good. And if I have more time, I might take another pass through to see if there's any new parks that showed up on CW or sideband. I want to improve my antennas for the future. I think the antenna I got's not very good. Thinking about a mag loop. To the right here, I've did some experiment. This is from home. I got some Faraday cloth, which is essentially a metallized fabric, and it's used for things like if you want to make a wallet or something that you can't read your credit cards through or something like that. That's make pouches and stuff for it. And it was about a 3x20 or 3x10 foot sheet of this stuff. And it makes a very good ground plane because it's solid. And I have a little tripod and I put my little mobile whips there and a little clip lead to there. And that actually works pretty well. And I can work on 40 meters on that as well. So I'll probably be using that next time if I do a thing where I'm going to be there for a while. Possibly new power. I like the 18, but it doesn't handle a lot of strong stations. So sometimes I get 2 or 3 strong guys call me at once and it overloads and I really can't pull anybody out. A little more power would help. uh, there was some an article in the March QST for a guy that made a little 25-watt amplifier for QRP relays, and that looks kind of interesting. I may get the circuit board from that and build that because 25 watts would be good for on sideband. I could get a little bit, making a lot more contacts easier. That 5 watts won't cut it. The problem with a lot of the 100-watt radios is they're really not designed for low power. And some people run tests and, I get this 100-watt radio, but if I turn it down to 25 watts, I won't drain my battery as fast. Well, it turns out they're drawing almost as much power from the battery if they're running 25 watts as they are 100 watts. So maybe a new radio isn't the thing. Maybe at FT8, there's a lot of guys that just do FT8, and it'd be more effective than CW in bad conditions, but it's more equipment to set up and to carry. And I kind of like side CW because most of the guys are doing sideband and digital, so I'm helping out the guys that chase the counties on CW. So in summary, for hunting, it's really easy to get started. Just register, get on, start working, guys, and you don't have to do it. I go hot and cold. I'll do it for a week or two. I'll work a bunch of guys, and I won't even bother again for another 2 or 3 weeks or 2 months or whatever. And if I'm on FT8 chasing DX and I see some guy calling CQ POTA, of course I'll work him, but I won't spend time going actually out looking for him. So you can put in whatever time you want, and on the weekends, a lot more activity than there is during the week, but there's still quite a bit. On any given afternoon, you might find on CW maybe 15 stations spotted, maybe 20, 25 on phone. It'll be on various bands, and you won't be able to work all of them because of the propagation things. But there's quite a bit of activity there. And then on activity weekends, it really gets crazy. And also on the weekends with holidays, a lot of people go camping on those weekends, and you can operate from, camp and operate from the park and stuff. So a lot of these guys are on the air. And I may give that a try, not during a holiday weekend, but I may consider going up north this summer and camp at a state park or something, and hit a bunch of parks around in that area. Seems like that might be a lot of fun. For activating, I just find it's a great excuse to get out of the house and operate and get some fresh air. And I really like field day. It's kind of like field day, but it's without a little preparation to set up and tear down work. It's nothing compared to the amount of work we put into an Azaki field day effort. And it's fun to go out there and have people looking for you and call you. And like I said, it's not uncommon for me to make 50 or 60 contacts in an hour just running 5 watts CW. Go to the POTA website. There's lots of information how to get started and explaining the program. Just really, the website is really well done. Just a ton of stuff. If you're activating, get a state park pass. If you're senior resident, like most of us, it's only $13 for a year. Some of the wildlife areas don't require a park. Some of the smaller parks didn't. Lizard Mound didn't require a pass, but then starting January 1st, they started requiring it. So last year you could have gotten in without one, but you can't now. And when you're there, take some time to take a hike or do some fishing. I've done that, and just enjoy the view and some of the other activities at the park. So that's it. Are there any questions?
Hi, Gary. I got a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
Actually, I only got one question. What speed do you operate CW at? And I have a comment. Lizard Mound is open. I was there yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the gate is open, and there is a huge pile of timber cut in the parking lot, but there's room to park. They took out a lot of the dead ash trees that had been killed by the emerald ash borer. So what speed do you operate at on CW?
I usually go right around 20 or 22, not too fast. A lot of guys come back really, really slow. So I'll go down to 8 or 10 words or whatever minute that they operate. Once in a while, it's amazing. You being a contester, you would probably recognize some of the calls, and every once in a while there'll be a well-known contester that'll call me. So I'll crank it up to 30, and we'll have our exchange of 30 word, and I'll go back to 20. 20 seems to be a reasonable compromise between what most people can copy and efficiency. But if you can't, if you want to do CW, go whatever speed because everybody will slow down for you. There's a lot of guys that are really slow, and I think a lot of POTA guys are learning code just to activate POTA, and I really encourage that. But thanks for the tip on Lizard Mound because the site information said it was closed. It's maybe they just stopped plowing it, so just say it's not open till April 1st or something like that. So I think next Monday is supposed to be pretty nice. Maybe I'll sneak up there Monday and see if I can leap ahead of Nate there for operating from the park.
I won't tell Nate it's open.
Well, hopefully he's watching this or he watches the video. Any other questions?
Gary, considering the propagation, the day-night propagation, and especially for long distances on 20 meters, do you think a lot of activators stay open after sunset?
A lot of them don't because it's dark and sometimes the park closes. Sometimes you work the guys. Some guys are camping or living in the parks. There's a guy, K7CAR. If you go to his website, he's got this really, really fancy RV that I think he lives in. I think he goes to some area and stays there for 2 or 3 months, and he's always on the air. I mean, I'll work him late at night and early in the morning and stuff like that. He's only on FT8, but he's on all the time. But most of it's during the day. When you get at night, sometimes there's less activity, except maybe on the activity weekends when people are camping and stuff. And the bands follow the propagation. 20 is usually the biggest band. That's the best band for the most activity. Earlier in the morning, 40 is very good. Unfortunately, I can't operate 40 mobile yet. I haven't got it to work. A lot of times, if I go to the farmers market, I always try to get there early to get the best deals and get the freshest stuff. And sometimes by the time I get to the park, it's still kind of early and 20 is really not open yet. So I'll operate 30 instead. And then there's other guys that are on in the higher bands. The problem is the skip zone is so if you're on like 15 or 10 meters, and I have worked, guys on all the different bands from 160 through 6. They'll be in the skip zone, so you're not going to work a guy in Southern Illinois at kind of 15 meters or something. So, and that's one of the problems. And I make a special effort to try to work all the Wisconsin ones, but if they're on 20 meters, unless they're in ground wave, you don't work them because you can't hear them.
This week I learned about beaches on the air, which sounds like a good idea for me. Have you made any contacts with the beaches on the air bunch?
No, I haven't heard of that one. There's a Walmart parking lot on the air thing, and they actually have a Walmart parking lot QSO party day. I personally think we should have a bars on the air thing. We operate from different bars, but I haven't seen anybody set that up yet.
I'll vote for that.
Yeah, I've got a question here,
Yeah.
Gary. Well, why don't you use your car battery instead of a portable battery?
I just didn't want to hook it up. I mean, I'm running low power. If I was running a 100-watt radio, then I go through the car battery, but I don't like to go through the power jacks because they really aren't supposed to handle a lot of current. I could probably get by with my QRP radio, but I also want to be, if I want to go to operate from a picnic table or something like that, it's very convenient.
Yes.
I have all the plugs all set up, so I actually have a little one of those plastic ammo cans you get from Harbor Freight. I got the battery in there and the cables, and I just open it up and just plug it in the radio. It's all set to go, and so I don't have to mess around with the car.
Gary, I got a couple things. Bill, W9MXQ.
Yeah.
One of the things that was the hardest for me to deal with when I started doing POTA was the fact that you really do not, I'm saying this, you correct me if I'm wrong, you really do not report anything but the QSO. So you don't really have to know the park number as far as your report.
Right. As a hunter, you don't have to.
You do it, and then they match up with my call, correct?
Right. In fact, during the Wisconsin QSO party this weekend, I worked some guy, and he was operating from a park, and then like on Monday or Tuesday, I was looking at my totals and I got a new park from Wisconsin, and it was during the QSO party type thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys in QSO parties do operate from there because they're activating, from different counties and stuff.
Right.
So, and like the guys that are on VHF, everybody's only interested in the grid number, and they don't generally say they're even operating POTA, but all of a sudden it just shows up.
Right. The other thing was I was going to go along with your statement there about immediate gratification. One of the first things that draws you in is you make a few QSOs, go on the website and find out you've got 5 or 6 certificates already.
Yeah.
Certificates for everything. And it makes you want more, it really does.
Well, that's it for me. I'm kind of goal driven type person in just
Right.
about everything in my life. And seeing, there's this one more award I can get there just kind of drives me. And the nice thing about it is it's not, you can pick it up and put it down whenever you want to and stuff. It's not like a contest. If you want to win, you got to plan on operating the whole thing, or if you're a DXer, you want to get to the top, it's going to take you 40 or 50 years to get to the top, but you can do it as your own pace. Like I said, I may go 2 months or so without, in the winter months without doing anything. Since I got activated in the activations now, I'm a lot more, I don't maybe operate much from home. I don't chase much from home, but I'll go out in the park and operate. And if I work a new park when I'm in a park, that counts for my hunter total, whether I work them, as an activator or from home as a hunter.
Well, I just have one last thing. I just checked for you, and Nate's not on the Zoom list, so your secret's safe with all of us.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks. Nice program, Gary.
Thank you.
Gary, question.
Yep.
Do you upload your contacts to Logbook of the World?
I have not yet. I've got to do that. It's a little bit more work because I'm operating from different places, and you got to set some stuff up with, a lot of them are different grid zones and stuff. And I really need to sit down and figure out apparently it's not that difficult, but I have not done that yet, but I really should, especially the ones that are I can probably just upload the ones that are in my same grid. That's probably okay. Any other questions?
If you're on Zoom, you need to unmute to ask a question.
All right. Well, I hope I encourage some of you to give this a try, either as a hunter or as an activator.